This video is audio content only. It does not contain any video footage or images. If you are expecting visual content, please be aware. This is intentionally provided in an audio-only format. We recommend listening to the audio rather than watching the screen. Thank you for your understanding. Welcome to a captivating journey into the heart of the Austrian Alps, to the magnificent Zillertal. Here, towering peaks and verdant valleys hold more than just breathtaking beauty. They hum with ancient whispers. Join us as we explore the Zillertal Sagen, a rich tapestry of legends, myths, and folktales passed down through generations. Discover stories rooted in history, moral dilemmas, and the profound connection between people and their mountain home. Prepare to be enchanted by a world where every craggy rock and secluded path has a tale to tell. Chapter 1. The Zillertal, a tapestry of Alpine legends. The Zillertal, a magnificent valley nestled deep within the Austrian Alps, is more than just a breathtaking landscape of towering peaks, verdant meadows, and rushing glacial rivers. It is a place where the very air seems to hum with ancient whispers, where every craggy rock face and secluded forest path holds a story, a legend, a fragment of human experience woven into the fabric of the land itself. For centuries, long before written history meticulously documented every event, the people of this valley relied on oral traditions to make sense of their world, to teach lessons, to preserve memories, and to entertain during long, dark winter nights. These are the Zillertal Sagen, the legends that form a vibrant, intricate tapestry, reflecting the soul of a community forged in the heart of the mountains. Stretching approximately 40 kilometers from its entry point near Jenbach in the Inntal to the high Alpine reaches around Meerhofen, the Zillertal is unique among the southern side valleys of the Inn. It boasts a remarkable breadth and fertility, a stark contrast to the dramatic, often harsh, high mountain terrain that flanks it. Named after the Ziller River that carves its path from south to north, this valley has been a cradle of human settlements since the Bronze Age. Archaeological finds speak of early inhabitants who adapted to the rhythms of nature, relying on agriculture and livestock. The Romans left their mark, integrating the valley into their vast network, bringing cultural and technological exchange. Later, under Bavarian rule and throughout the medieval period, the Zillertal developed as an agricultural hub, its culture shaped by both church and feudal lords. Yet, even as industries emerged and eventually tourism transformed its economy, the deep-seated traditions and a unique dialect persisted, a testament to the resilience and distinct identity of its people. The Zillertal is renowned for its industrious and creative residents, historically known as Oldtrager, oil carriers, and Warenhandler, merchants, who traveled widely and worldwide for their musicality, from the legendary Rainer singers to countless folk music groups that still thrive today. This rich historical and cultural backdrop, where a unique dialect often served as the very language of oral tradition, provides fertile ground for the flourishing of its legends. These Zillertal Sagen are not mere fairy tales spun for children. They are profound narratives, often rooted in historical events, moral dilemmas, or attempts to explain the inexplicable. They served as a vital means of understanding a world where nature's power was absolute, where survival depended on keen observation and respect for unseen forces. Before the advent of modern science, these stories offered explanations for blizzards, rockfalls, strange lights in the forest, or unexpected good fortune. They reinforced community values, warned against hubris, and honored the industriousness and piety essential for life in such a demanding environment. Passed down through generations, often around hearth fires or during communal gatherings, these legends became an intrinsic part of the Zillertal identity, a collective memory that shaped how people perceived their surroundings and their place within it. The very landscape of the Zillertal is imbued with these stories, each peak, cave, and forest bearing the weight of a legend. Consider the tale of the Eismandlin, the Icemen, strange creatures with long white beards, noses like icicles, and eyes that sparkled like snow crystals. These mountain dwellers, clad in gray jackets and green hats, were once visitors to a lonely Alpine dairyman. One night they appeared before him, sorrowfully announcing their departure from the Alpine pasture forever. The dairyman soon forgot the encounter, but the following winter, caught in a treacherous snowstorm and near collapse, he found himself lost and exhausted. It was then that the Eismandlin reappeared, dancing around him, warming him with their breath and urging him onward. Their intervention saved his life, guiding him back to safety before vanishing forever. This story, like many others, speaks to the profound connection between the people and the often unseen forces of nature, suggesting that even the harshest elements could harbor benevolent spirits, capable of both mystery and miraculous aid. It highlights the vulnerability of human life in the mountains and the hope for supernatural assistance when all seems lost. Yet, not all mountain spirits were as benign as the Eismandlin. The alpine pastures, vital for summer grazing, were often sites of isolation and hard labor, making them fertile ground for tales of spirits and moral lessons. The story of the Shindam in Stillupgrund serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of irreverence. In this remote alpine pasture, a dairyman and two herdsmen, in a moment of pagan revelry and excessive indulgence, decided to carve a grotesque idol from a stone pine trunk. They smeared butter on its mouth, mocking it when it wouldn't eat, and even knocked it over in their drunken amusement. A third herdsman, uneasy with their sacrilegious games, watched silently. As their mockery escalated, the wooden figure suddenly came alive, its eyes glowing like fire, devouring everything in its path. Terrified, the men fled. Later that night, as they lay sleepless in their hut, the idol reappeared, now a monstrous figure. It declared, "I'll find the first one, I'll smack the second one, and I'll throw the third one over the roof." And so it did, brutally punishing the two irreverent men, while sparing the one who had refused to participate in their blasphemous acts. This chilling legend underscores the deep-seated belief in divine retribution for disrespecting sacred traditions and the natural order, a powerful moral tale for a community deeply intertwined with its land and faith. The landscape itself sometimes bore witness to these ancient narratives, providing tangible links to the past. These tales, whether of benevolent ice spirits or vengeful idols, are more than just quaint stories from a bygone era. They are cultural artifacts, windows into the fears, hopes, and moral compass of the Zillertal people. They reflect a deep-seated respect for nature's majesty and its unpredictable power, the importance of community cohesion, and the enduring human quest for meaning in a complex world. The legends of the Zillertal are a living heritage, constantly reinterpreted and retold, shaping the valley's identity and offering profound insights into the timeless relationship between humanity and its environment. How do these deep-rooted narratives continue to influence the modern Zillertal, a vibrant tourist destination, and what do they reveal about the universal human need for storytelling in the face of the unknown? Chapter 2. Hidden Gold, Haunting Guardians. The Zillertal, with its majestic peaks reaching for the sky, also holds profound secrets deep within its rocky embrace. For the people who have called this valley home for centuries, the mountains were not just a towering presence above, but a mysterious realm beneath their feet, a source of both sustenance and peril. This subterranean world, rich with the promise of hidden treasures and the unsettling presence of unseen spirits, forms a significant and captivating part of the Zillertal Sagen. The history of mining in the Zillertal is a long and arduous one, stretching back for at least 600 years. While the famed silver mines of Schwarz in the neighboring Inntal were a significant economic engine for the entire region, influencing the Zillertal indirectly, the valley itself also harbored its own mineral wealth. The local museum in Fugen, for instance, dedicates a section to this very history, reminding visitors of the deep connection between the people and the Earth's riches. Miners, known as Knappen, toiled in dark, cramped tunnels, extracting precious ores like silver and gold from the unforgiving rock. This dangerous work, often carried out in isolation, fosters a profound respect for the mountain's depths and the spirits believed to dwell within them. The very existence of a Knappenkapelle, or miner's chapel, in Fugenberg speaks volumes about the spiritual needs of these men, seeking divine protection or perhaps appeasing the unseen forces that governed their perilous profession. It is no surprise, then, that tales of hidden treasures permeate the folklore of the Zillertal. Gold, silver, and other precious metals were not merely abstract concepts. They were tangible elements extracted from the earth through immense labor and risk. These were the riches that could transform a family's fortunes overnight, lifting them from poverty to prosperity. But such wealth rarely came without a catch, a moral lesson, or the watchful eye of a supernatural guardian. Consider the intriguing tales of the Goldzapfen, the golden stone pine cones, found in the area of Hart. These weren't literal stone pine cones, but likely a metaphorical representation of valuable finds, perhaps nuggets of gold or rich veins of ore resembling the shape of stone pine cones. The goldworm, or goldworm, and the goldlem, or gold clay, further attest to the belief in natural formations holding or indicating precious metals. These stories are echoes of a time when the earth was alive with potential wealth, waiting to be discovered by the fortunate or the persistent. The Silberkugels, or silver balls, also mentioned in Hart, point to similar, perhaps more elusive silver deposits. But the most striking examples of hidden treasure legends often involved a profound moral dimension, a warning about the price of ill-gotten gains or the responsibilities that came with sudden wealth. One such chilling tale is that of the Schatz auf der Reichenspitze, the treasure on the Reichenspitze mountain, which sits on the border between the Pinzgau and Zillertal regions. This sharp, snow-capped peak was said to conceal caves filled with immense riches, precious stones and metals, available to anyone brave enough to venture into its depths. The catch, however, was dire. Whoever took these treasures would live a prosperous life, but after death, their soul would be condemned to eternally guard the very same wealth, suffering the kalte Pein, or cold torment, in the icy mountain caves. The legend even describes a succession of these spectral guardians. When a new soul arrived, the oldest guardian was finally released to find peace. This powerful narrative is brought to life through an anecdote about a farmer from Stum. He had faced ruin, his farm and livelihood on the brink of collapse. Then, miraculously, he became wealthy overnight, transforming into the richest farmer in the region. No one knew how, but years later, after his sudden death, a neighbor encountered him on the Reichenspitze, dressed in thick winter clothes, with a hollow voice, stating he was there to guard the treasure. The neighbor, returning home, learned of the farmer's death moments before. The pieces clicked into place. The farmer had found the treasure, but paid the ultimate price, his soul forever bound to the icy depths. This story serves as a stark reminder of the spiritual cost of earthly wealth, a cautionary tale against avarice, and a reflection of the deep-seated belief that nature demands a balance for what it gives. While some treasures were guarded by tormented souls, others were revealed by more benevolent, or at least enigmatic, subterranean spirits. The Puchelmandeln, small, often mischievous mountain gnomes, were sometimes associated with these hidden riches. They were believed to dwell in the mountains, particularly at places like Helfenstein near Hart, and could sometimes guide people to valuable finds or protect them from harm, but also punish those who were disrespectful. These beings, along with the more generic Schachtwandchen, or mine dwarfs, represented the unseen workforce of the mountain, tiny guardians of its mineral heart. Then there were the Venediga, or Venetian men, mysterious figures often depicted as wise prospectors or magicians from distant lands, possessing uncanny knowledge of where to find precious ores. Their very name suggests the historical trade routes and the influence of larger European commercial centers on the remote Alpine valleys. These figures were said to come and go, bringing with them secrets of the Earth's bounty, hinting at the external expertise often needed to exploit the region's mineral resources. Not all spirits of the depths were benevolent or neutral. The Grubenhexe, or mine witch from Schwendau, points to a darker, more malevolent side of the subterranean world. Such a figure would embody the dangers of mining, collapses, gas pockets, and unforeseen misfortunes, personifying them as the malicious acts of a supernatural being. Similarly, Die Grubel Lake, the mine lake or puddle in Finkenberg, could evoke fears of watery deaths in the dark flooded shafts, where spirits might lurk, waiting to drag unwary miners to their doom. However, not all encounters with hidden wealth were fraught with such peril. Sometimes fortune smiled upon the truly needy, seemingly as a reward for their honest poverty. In Bruck am Ziller, a poor farmer and his family lived in a dwelling ironically named Silberberg, or Silver Mountain, despite their abject poverty. One stormy night, lightning struck their barn, destroying their meager hay supply. The farmer's wife, distraught, walked to Schlitter's. On the Ziller Bridge, she encountered a small man, the Mandel auf der Zillerbrücke, who, seeing her sorrow, told her to return home and tear open the hearth plates, for money lay hidden beneath. Skeptical, her husband initially refused, fearing further expense. But the wife, remembering the little man's earnestness, secretly broke open the hearth that night and discovered a large pot filled with gold ducats. Their poverty was instantly banished, and the mysterious little man was never seen again. This sonderbare Fund, or strange find, illustrates a more hopeful aspect of these legends, where divine intervention or benevolent spirits rewarded virtue and relieved suffering, often in the most unexpected places, right within their own homes. These legends, whether they speak of eternal torment for greed or miraculous salvation for the poor, offer a fascinating glimpse into the cultural psyche of the Zillertal people. They reflect a society deeply connected to its environment, where the harsh realities of mountain life fostered both a longing for wealth and a profound understanding of its potential spiritual costs. The depths of the Zillertal Mountains, therefore, are not merely geological formations. They are repositories of human hopes, fears, and moral compasses, etched into the very rock and whispered through generations. Even today, as modern tourism defines much of the valley's economy, one wonders if the echo of these subterranean spirits and the allure of hidden treasures still resonate among those who venture into the Zillertal's majestic and mysterious heart. Chapter 3. Spirits of the Peaks Beyond. The glimmer of hidden gold and the echoes of miners' picks, the Zillertal Mountains hold a deeper, more ethereal presence. They whisper tales of ancient beings, figures woven into the very fabric of the Alpine landscape, embodying both its serene beauty and its raw, untamed power. These are the narratives of the Saligerfrauen, the Blessed Women, and their often antagonistic counterparts, the Wild Men. Spirits that shaped the understanding of the natural world and the moral compass of the Zillertal people for generations. The Seligenfrauen, or Blessed Women, often known by local variations like Wilde Fraulein, Wild Maidens, or Talgilgen, Valley Lilies in the Zillertal, are among the most enchanting and complex figures in Alpine folklore. They are depicted as ethereal beings of delicate beauty, often with golden hair, dwelling high in the mountains, deep within caves, or near pristine springs, such as the specific Holle des Wildenfräuleins near Finkenberg. Unlike the more malevolent spirits, these maidens were generally benevolent, well disposed towards humans who showed them respect. They were seen as guardians of nature, particularly of the wild animals, and possessed an innate wisdom they sometimes shared with mortals. For the early inhabitants of the Zillertal, these figures represented the nurturing, life-giving aspects of the mountains. They were believed to impart valuable knowledge, such as the secrets of cheese-making, or to guide people in times of great need. Their presence was considered a blessing, a conduit through which the mountains themselves bestowed prosperity upon the valley. Imagine a shepherd lost in a sudden mountain fog, suddenly guided by a faint melodic singing, or a farmer receiving an unexpected bounty after leaving a small offering at a secluded spring. Such were the subtle ways the Seligenfrauen were thought to interact with the human world, offering aid and wisdom, acting as intermediaries between humanity and the mysterious forces of the peaks. However, their benevolence came with strict conditions, primarily centered around respect for the natural world they embodied. One of their most significant rules was the absolute prohibition against harming chamois, the agile mountain goats that were considered their sacred companions. To violate this unspoken pact was to invite their wrath, a retribution that could be as swift and devastating as an alpine rockfall. A compelling legend from the broader Tyrolean region, often echoed in Zillertal, tells of a wealthy hunter who, driven by an insatiable desire for a prize, relentlessly pursued a herd of chamois into the remote Hinterreis in the Ötztal. The animals, in their desperate flight, vanished into a rock crevice that suddenly opened before them with a thunderous roar. From within this chasm emerged a beautiful woman with golden hair, one of the Seligenfräulein. She warned the hunter to cease his relentless pursuit of the chamois and to avoid that sacred place. If he complied, he and his family would live happily in the valley. If he did not, her revenge would be terrible. For a year the hunter heeded her warning, but his hunting instinct eventually overcame his fear. He returned to the Hinterreis, determined to shoot a rare white chamois. As he raised his rifle, a terrifying cracking sound split the air, and massive rock masses broke loose, hurtling into the valley below, devastating everything in their path. To this day, the scree slopes in the Ötztal are said to be a stark reminder of the Seligenfräulein's furious vengeance, a powerful lesson in the consequences of human greed and disrespect for nature. Despite their power, the Seligenfrauen were not invulnerable. They were often pursued by a fearsome antagonist, the Wildermann, or wild man, who harbored a deadly hatred for them. In Zillertal folklore, these maidens sought refuge from their persecutor in specific places, such as tree stumps marked with 3 carved crosses, or, most curiously, in flax fields. The flax, a plant cultivated by humans, held a particular protective magic, for into its confines the Wildermann could not follow. This detail paints a poignant picture of these delicate beings, powerful yet needing human spaces for protection, highlighting a symbiotic relationship between the wild and the cultivated, the mythical and the mundane. But woe betide any human who inadvertently or intentionally interfered with this delicate balance. A chilling tale from the Reichshof near Zell am Ziller serves as a stark warning. For a time, several Seligenfrauen graced the farm with their presence, bringing immense blessings and prosperity to the household. The farmer's wife, a pious woman, recognized and appreciated this divine favor. Her husband, however, harbored a secret unease, a deep-seated suspicion of these mysterious beings. He constantly sought a way to rid his farm of them. One day, he witnessed one of the shy maidens fleeing from the Waldermann, seeking sanctuary in a flax field. Seizing the opportunity, the farmer, with a misguided sense of control, ran to the field and, using a stick, drove the Saligerfrau out. In that very instant, the Waldermann gained power over the unfortunate maiden, seizing her and tearing her apart. From that day on, no Saligerfrau was ever seen at the Reichshof again. With their departure, the farm's blessings vanished. Missed harvests followed, the cattle succumbed to disease, and soon the farmer himself met an unexpected death. This tragic narrative underscores a profound cultural belief that the prosperity of the community was intrinsically linked to the respect shown to these mountain spirits, and that human interference, driven by fear or ignorance, could lead to catastrophic consequences. In stark contrast to the often benevolent, though easily offended, Saligerfrauen were the fearsome wild men. These figures represent the raw, untamed, and sometimes destructive aspects of the Alpine wilderness. They are typically described as hairy, wild creatures dwelling in remote caves and high mountain reaches. While often depicted as dangerous, some wild folk were also known to be helpful, even teaching herbal lore to respectful humans. Indeed, some Wildesmond, little wild men, figures could be seen as advisors, offering guidance on mountain paths or sharing knowledge of medicinal plants, as in a tale from Zell. However, many were depicted as powerful, dangerous, and even antagonistic forces, particularly towards the Saligerfrauen. One of the most vivid examples of a wild man figure is the Tuxer Riese, the Tux giant, whose story originates in the Tuxertal. This colossal giant, driven from South Tyrol, descended upon the valley, instilling terror among the villagers. He forced them to gather all the stones in the valley to build his massive castle, and demanded their hard-earned bread and food as tribute, leaving the local populace with little for themselves. His sharp eyes ensured that no one could escape to seek help from the Saligerfrauen in the mountains without being brutally punished. This narrative paints the wild man as an oppressive force, a symbol of overwhelming power and exploitation, demanding submission and resources from the human community. However, the balance of power in the mountains was not always in the wild man's favor. The Saligerfrauen of Tuxertal, those very blessed women who protected the valley from storms and other calamities, eventually intervened. When a group of brave young men ventured into the mountains to gather rocks for the giant, they encountered the Saligerfrauen. Weeping, they pleaded for help against the tyrannical giant. The maidens promised their assistance, instructing the young men to continue gathering the blocks as commanded. Days later, as the giant began to stack the massive stones for his castle, a tremendous storm erupted. Lightning flashed, thunder roared, and a violent gale scattered the giant's building blocks in all directions. The storm, conjured by the Saligerfrauen, effectively defeated the Tuxer Riese, protecting the villagers and restoring harmony to the valley. This story is a powerful illustration of the interplay between these mythical figures, showing the Saligerfrauen not just as passive recipients of human respect, but as active protectors of the community against destructive forces. These tales of Saligerfrauen and wild men are more than just captivating stories. They are cultural touchstones, reflecting a profound relationship between humanity and the alpine environment. They embody the awe and fear inspired by the mountains, the constant struggle for survival, and the moral codes that governed community life. The Saligerfrauen, with their gentle nature and connection to life, may echo ancient earth goddesses or fertility spirits, while the wild men might represent primeval forces of chaos or the untamed wilderness. The constant persecution of the Saligerfrauen by the wild man could symbolize the ongoing tension between order and chaos, civilization and wilderness, or perhaps even the patriarchal subjugation of older matriarchal beliefs. These specific narratives provided explanations for the dual nature of their mountain home, offered moral lessons about respecting its delicate balance, and reinforced community values by illustrating the consequences of greed and disrespect and the rewards of piety and kindness. Even today, as the Zillertal embraces modernity and tourism, these whispers from the mountains continue to resonate, reminding us of a time when the peaks were alive with spirits and every rock and tree held a story. Do these ancient tales still subtly influence how people interact with the majestic yet formidable Alpine landscape, and what lessons might they still hold for us about our place in the wild world? Chapter 4. Shadows, Spirits, and the Devil's Bargain. As we journey deeper into the Zillertal, beyond the protective embrace of the Salish and the formidable presence of the wild men, we encounter the darker, more unsettling narratives that cast long shadows across the valley. These darker narratives of witches, restless ghosts, and the cunning devil personified the fears, anxieties, and moral struggles of the Zillertal people, serving to explain the inexplicable, enforce social norms, and reaffirm the precarious balance between good and evil. The figure of the witch, or hexa, looms large in the folklore of the Zillertal, much as it did across Europe during times of hardship and superstition. Witches were often blamed for crop failures, livestock diseases, and particularly for destructive weather. In the Zillertal, where livelihoods were inextricably linked to the whims of nature, the power to manipulate storms was a terrifying capability. While the Hartberger Hexe was perhaps the most notorious, tales of specific witches were widespread across the valley, from Die Zischken in Uderns and Die Tristal Hexe in Stum, to Die Fahnhexen in Hippach, Die Hexe von Brundling in Ramsau, and the mountain witches like Die Hochstuenhexe from Zillergrund and Die Hexe auf der Grasaste from Stellupgrund. These varied figures underscore the pervasive belief in local sorcery. The Hartberger Hexe was a master of Wettermachen, or weather-making. She would ride through the air on her broom, perch in a rocky niche, and conjure fierce thunderstorms, blinding lightning, and devastating hailstorms that could wipe out an entire season's harvest. Her appearance was rarely witnessed, but those who did see her described a gruesome sight they would never forget. She actively interfered with daily life, stealing milk from cows, curdling it in the udder, extinguishing hearth fires, and breaking tools. Her favorite mischief, however, involved the butter churns, where she would lurk, making the butter rancid. Yet even a witch could be outsmarted. One resourceful maiden, realizing the butter wasn't churning properly, heated a poker and thrust it into the churn through the tap hole. A hiss and a cloud of smoke filled the room, smelling of burnt horn. The churning then proceeded without issue. The next day, the witch was seen on a mountain meadow, her face burned and her eyes swollen, the air around her smelling like a blacksmith's forge. She had paid a painful price for her meddling, but her most significant defeat came at the hands of the community. Once a brave young man, spotting her stirring up a storm with an iron rod in the slate rock, dared to ask her what she was doing and where the storm was headed. She sneered that it was for Hartberg, but added a cryptic remark. If the people start to glingle and clangle, then they can weg der Zangeln, meaning if they ring and clang the bells, they can ward it off. The young man understood. He rushed down to Hart, gathered the sacristan, and together they rang the consecrated bell in the Hart chapel. The powerful sound dispersed the approaching storm, much to the witch's fury. Enraged, she flew around the bell tower, biting its rim, leaving scratches that were visible until the First World War, when the bell was melted down for ammunition. This story highlights the community's belief in the power of sacred objects and collective action against malevolent forces, turning a terrifying natural phenomenon into a battle against a personified evil that could be overcome. While the hexa represented a malevolent force, it's important to note that the Alpine context of witchcraft was more nuanced. Figures like the Sennerin, women herding cattle in high pastures, and Krauterweiber, herbalists, were traditional folk magic practitioners, possessing deep knowledge of herbs, weather, and healing. They were respected for their wisdom and connection to nature, embodying a more benevolent, practical form of mountain magic. Even the Perchten, masked figures driving away evil, were part of this broader magical tradition, showing that not all supernatural figures were purely malevolent. Such tales of witches and their gatherings were widespread. One particularly vivid account comes from a Hexentons on the Gerlos Platte. A hunter, making his way home one evening, stumbled upon a clearing where witches were holding a wild dance. The air was filled with eerie music, and to his astonishment, he saw a giant black cat playing a clarinet on an oven column. The hunter, unnerved by the unholy spectacle, raised his rifle and shot the cat. With a piercing shriek, the witches scattered, flying away on oven shovels. Their revelry abruptly ended. This unique and memorable image captures the bizarre and terrifying nature of these secret covens, a stark warning against stumbling upon such unholy gatherings. Beyond the active malice of witches, the Zillertal was also populated by a myriad of ghosts and restless spirits. These were often the arme Seelen, or poor souls, those unable to find peace in the afterlife, condemned to wander and lament, or sometimes to perform repetitive mundane tasks. Their presence could be unsettling, even terrifying, but often they were more pathetic than dangerous, seeking redemption or simply to make their presence known. The Hartergeister, the ghosts of heart, illustrate the diverse forms these hauntings could take. At the old Fostelmühl, the mill wheel would turn with a great clatter in the dead of night, even when the water had been diverted, a spectral echo of past labor. Near the Wachselkreuz, a veiled woman was seen weeping bitterly, her sorrow eternal. At the Eggermühl, a masked man, trying to scare others during the Perchten season, was himself terrified by a towering white-shrouded ghost, almost 2 meters tall, which chased him until he remembered an exorcism and banished it back to the mill. On the Olberg, a farmer encountered a coffin that vanished into the woods as he began to recite a prayer, a reminder that courage and faith could repel such apparitions. Even the simple act of butter churning could be haunted, as a hunter on the Heinzletteralm witnessed a butter churn spinning relentlessly on its own in an empty hut. These stories reveal a cultural understanding of the landscape as deeply inscribed with human pasts, where every mill, cross, and alm hut could be a stage for spectral drama. Not all ghosts were supernatural. A humorous tale from Brandberg tells of a brave servant who, hearing of a ghost haunting the local chapel, decided to confront it. As he approached, he heard muffled voices from within asking, "Should we stab him outside or inside?" Terrified, the servant fled for his life. It turned out the ghosts were merely sheep thieves debating where to butcher a stolen ram, adding a touch of earthly mischief to the realm of the spectral. Among the more specific spirits was the Kaisermandel, often described as the ghost of a wasteful dairyman condemned to haunt Alpine huts and do penance for his past transgressions. This origin story, of a human spirit doing penance, places the Kaisermandel firmly within the realm of restless spirits rather than elemental mountain beings. While often portrayed as suffering, these spirits could also be very boshhaft, malicious if provoked, adding a layer of complexity to their character. Then there were the Albear, a type of house spirit or goblin, known to appear in various forms, sometimes as a bird, bringing mischief or omens. These spirits often had a dual nature, capable of both harmless pranks and more sinister actions. The Hauseregeist near Meyerhofen was known to wander the Hausere meadows at night, lamenting, "I know the Hausere meadows, 9 times meadows and 9 times forest. That's why I am so old." One day, the ghost simply ceased its nightly appearances and was never seen again, its fate unknown, leaving the community to wonder if it had finally found peace or simply moved on, a poignant example of the transient nature of even eternal suffering. The Sprendelmandlen of Stum, little spirits, were another example of localized, often mischievous, supernatural entities that were part of the everyday fabric of belief. But perhaps the most formidable and ubiquitous dark figure in Zillertal folklore is the devil himself. The Gott sei bei uns, or God be with us, as he was sometimes euphemistically called, embodied temptation, sin, and the ultimate price of a soul. He was a frequent visitor to the Zillertal, often appearing in various guises to tempt mortals, make Faustian bargains, or simply to cause mischief. Stories of the devil are found across the valley, from Stum and Zell to Finkenberg and Hippach. One chilling encounter from Fugen tells of a young farm girl who was secretly expecting her lover. One evening she heard a beautiful song outside, just as her beloved would sing. Filled with joy, she opened the door, and a young farmhand stepped inside. As she closed the door to her chamber, he suddenly transformed into the devil, clawed hands grabbing her, whirling her around, intending to violate her. Her father, woken by her screams, rushed in. With a desperate prayer, he received an inspiration. He ran to the stable, grabbed a white lamb, and placed it before the devil. The sight of the pure white lamb, coupled with the father's prayers, terrified the devil, who vanished instantly, leaving the daughter unharmed. This story emphasizes the power of innocence and faith to repel even the most potent evil. The devil, however, was not always so easily defeated. He often offered tempting bargains, especially to those in dire need. A classic motif found in many cultures, the devil's bargain appears in several Zillertal Sagen, often with a clever twist. In Finkenberg, before a bridge spanned the treacherous Tuxerbach Gorge, travel was difficult. The local carpenters, stumped on how to build a bridge, were about to give up when the devil appeared. He offered to build the bridge overnight, in exchange for the soul of the first creature to cross it. The villagers were distraught, but a clever farmer devised a plan. The next morning, a sturdy wooden bridge spanned the gorge. The farmer, with a scrawny goat in tow, kicked the animal onto the bridge. As the goat reached the middle, the furious devil swooped down, grabbed it by its horns, and flew straight to hell. The bridge, forever after known as the Teufelsteg, or Devil's Bridge, stands as a testament to human ingenuity in outsmarting evil. Another tale of a devil outsmarted comes from Brandberg, involving the Hauslingbauer, a farmer from the Zillergrund. This farmer, a jovial but often absent man who preferred taverns to his fields, found his farm falling into disrepair. One day, with his creditors seizing his grain, he despaired, wishing for help even from the devil. Just then, the devil appeared, offering money for seed in exchange for half the harvest. The farmer agreed. When harvest time came, he instructed his servants to cut the wheat only in the middle, taking the ears and leaving the long stalks. When the devil arrived for his share, the farmer pointed to the barren stalks, saying, "Here is your half." The devil, realizing he'd been tricked, left in a huff. The next year, he demanded the top half of the harvest. The clever farmer planted potatoes and turnips, and when the devil returned, he was presented with only leaves and stalks, while the farmer took the valuable roots. Enraged, the devil vanished in a cloud of stench, swearing never to deal with a Zillertaler again. This legend, like the Teufelsteg, celebrates the quick wit and cunning of the local people in overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds, even against the embodiment of evil. A similar tale of human cleverness comes from Aldrons, where a farmer made a pact with the devil to build a mill overnight in exchange for his soul. As the devil toiled, the farmer, fearing for his fate, tricked him into believing dawn was breaking by making a rooster crow early. The devil, bound by his agreement to finish before sunrise, abandoned the mill in a rage, leaving the farmer's soul intact and the mill unfinished but functional. Despite his power and cunning, the devil had his weaknesses, particularly in the face of divine purity. On the Bergstallschrofen in Schwendau, long before a church was built there, the devil had a favorite resting place from which he observed humans. One day, as he approached, he was struck with terror. The Virgin Mary was kneeling there, hands folded in prayer, her gaze directed heavenward. Unnoticed by her, the devil tiptoed backward through the bushes. But in his haste, he misstepped and tumbled headfirst down the cliff face. He clawed at the rock in his haste, tumbling down the cliff face and disappearing into hell, never to return to Bergstallschrofen, a testament to the devil's fear of holiness. These stories of witches, ghosts, and the devil are profound reflections of the human condition in the Zillertal. Witches embodied the fear of natural calamities and the destructive potential of human knowledge, while ghosts represented unresolved pasts and the lingering presence of the dead. The devil, the ultimate tempter, served as a moral compass, highlighting the dangers of greed, pride, and sin, but also the triumph of cleverness, faith, and purity. In an era before scientific explanations, these narratives provided a framework for understanding misfortune, a means of coping with the unknown, and a powerful tool for instilling community values. They speak to a deep-seated belief in a world teeming with unseen forces, both benevolent and malevolent, and humanity's constant struggle to navigate between them. Even in today's modern Zillertal, these ancient shadows continue to subtly influence the valley's cultural landscape, reminding us of the enduring human fascination with the darker side of existence and the timeless struggle between light and shadow. These stories of witches, ghosts, and the devil are profound reflections of the human condition in the Zillertal. Witches. Chapter 5. The Land's Voice. Zillertal's Earthly Narratives. In the Zillertal, the majestic landscape is far more than a mere backdrop. It is a living entity, an active participant in the unfolding dramas of human existence, and a silent yet eloquent storyteller. The towering peaks, the deep winding valleys, the rushing rivers, and the very composition of the earth have sculpted not only the physical environment, but also the minds and imaginations of its inhabitants. For centuries, the people of this Alpine realm found meaning, warning, and wonder embedded in the contours of their homeland, weaving intricate legends that reflect a profound and often spiritual connection to the land beneath their feet. These are the stories where the mountains whisper secrets, the rivers carry fates, and the very ground bears the indelible marks of history, morality, and the supernatural. The Zillertal, a broad, fertile trough valley, stands in striking contrast to the rugged, often precipitous high alpine ranges that flank it. This geographical duality, a relatively hospitable valley floor giving way to formidable mountain flanks and glaciers, created a unique tension that profoundly influenced its folklore. It was this constant negotiation between nurturing valley and challenging peaks that gave birth to narratives explaining the inexplicable, reinforcing community bonds, and imparting crucial lessons for survival. Nowhere is this dynamic more vividly expressed than in the legends surrounding the high alpine pastures and glaciers. These were not just seasonal grazing lands, they were sacred spaces where human endeavor met the untamed wilderness. The tale of the Gefrorene Wand, or frozen wall, from the Tuxtal stands as a chilling testament to the land's moral authority. This legend speaks of an alpine pasture, once the largest and most fertile in the Tuxtal, where milk flowed like cream and no one knew hunger. Yet this abundance led to hubris. One Sunday, as church bells called the faithful to Mass, the dairymen and women lay lazily in their straw beds, mocking those who went to pray. Their sacrilege deepened as they began to play with large, fat butterballs, rolling them across the lush meadows until they burst against trees, and eventually aiming them at the distant church in the valley below. As the first butterball struck the church door, a terrifying thunderclap shook the mountains. Lightning struck repeatedly, and black clouds enveloped the Alm. First rain, then snow, fell relentlessly, freezing all life on the pasture. When the storm finally abated after 3 days, the entire Alm had vanished, replaced by a deep white snowfield that buried the impious revelers beneath. The mountain had frozen solid, forever after known as the Gefrorene Wand. This story directly attributes a dramatic geological formation, a glacier or permanent snowfield, to divine punishment for human arrogance and wastefulness. A powerful geographical explanation steeped in moral warning. It illustrates how the land itself, particularly its most formidable features, could serve as a permanent reminder of ethical transgressions. Yet the mountains were not always punitive. Benevolent icemen dwelling in the high peaks sometimes offered aid, showing the high alpine environment not just as a source of danger, but also of unexpected protective benevolence. Conversely, some alpine pastures offered a different kind of moral lesson, reminding that even remote areas demanded respect for tradition and the natural order. The Reichenspitze, a sharp snow-capped peak with its permanent snow and forbidding caves, became the physical manifestation of eternal penance for the avaricious, a theme explored in an earlier chapter. Its icy depths were believed to imprison the souls of those who dared to take its hidden treasures, condemning them to guard the wealth in the mountain's cold embrace, a direct echo of the unforgiving nature of the high peaks. The Zillertal's valleys and gorges, carved deep by ancient glaciers and restless rivers, also played a crucial role in shaping its legends, often becoming the stage for encounters with spectral beings. The Dornauklamm, a narrow, wild ravine through which the Zembach thunders, was reputedly haunted by a weiße Frau, a white lady. Clad in white veils, she would appear to nocturnal wanderers, subtly attempting to lure them off the path and into the swirling waters below. The dramatic, dangerous topography of the gorge, with its roaring waters and treacherous paths, perfectly suited the legend of such a spectral temptress, much like the Teufelsteg in Finkenberg, a site of a famous devil's bargain, as detailed in Chapter 4. Her presence personified the inherent dangers of these wild, untamed passages, a natural warning for those who might underestimate the mountain environment. Similarly, a white lady was also said to roam the Zemgrund, her non-human form revealed by a hollowback, another spirit intrinsically linked to a specific, wild geographical location. These tales transform dangerous natural features into places of supernatural encounter, imbuing the landscape with an animated, watchful presence. The Earth's depths, too, held their own personified dangers. Some legends spoke of malevolent spirits intrinsically linked to specific subterranean features, embodying the perils of mining and watery depths in dark shafts. Yet the Earth also promised bounty, with beliefs in natural formations holding precious metals, expanding the idea of the land's hidden riches and potential. Beyond these grand features, individual rock formations and prominent landmarks became imbued with potent stories, transforming them into sites of power, prophecy, or divine intervention. At the very entrance to the Zillertal, high above Strasse, the Brettfall commands attention. Here, a humble miner, daily traversing the steep path to the silver mines of Schwaz, decided to affix a carved image of the Virgin Mary to a fir tree. He believed a short prayer before it would protect him from the dangers of the mine. To his astonishment, the image repeatedly vanished from the tree, only to be found higher up on the Brettfall Schrofen, the rocky outcrop. This miraculous relocation, occurring 3 times, was interpreted as a clear sign from heaven. The Mother of God wished to be venerated precisely at that elevated spot. The miner, with his savings, built a wooden chapel, which eventually grew into a church and pilgrimage site. This legend directly explains the origin of a sacred place by attributing divine will to the geographical feature itself, turning a natural rock formation into a chosen sanctuary. The visual prominence of the Brettfall, greeting all who enter the valley, naturally made it a focal point for such a foundational myth. Similarly, the Bergstallschrofen in Schwendau, a prominent rocky hill, bears the indelible marks of the Virgin Mary's holiness, which once drove the devil from his favored resting place there, a tale recounted in chapter 4. But the Bergstallschrofen holds other prophecies too, linking it to destiny and hidden wealth. One legend foretells the growth of a tree with 3 crowns on the Schrofen, from whose middle crown a cradle would be carved. The first child to lie in this cradle, born on a Sunday solstice night, would, years later, have to circle the church 3 times at midnight, holding their breath. A glowing snake bearing a golden key in its mouth would then appear, leading the child to an immeasurably rich treasure behind a hidden door in the rock. This intricate prophecy weaves together a specific geographical feature, a rare celestial event, and a destined individual, emphasizing the idea that the land itself holds the keys to future fortunes, waiting for the right moment and the right person. These stories transform geological formations into sentient parts of the landscape, imbued with historical memory and prophetic power. The very layout and interconnectedness of the Zillertal communities, dictated by its geography, also gave rise to poignant and practical legends. The difficult terrain and harsh winters meant that travel between villages, especially in the upper reaches of the valley, was arduous and often dangerous. The Leichenzuge in Hintertux, the corpse processions from Hintertux, vividly illustrate this challenge. Before the construction of roads and the establishment of local cemeteries, the deceased from the remote Tuxertal had to be carried for almost 27 kilometers, ascending 936 meters and descending 1,323 meters, over the Tuxer Joch Pass through rugged terrain to Steinach am Brenner for burial. This immense logistical and emotional burden, lasting until the mid-14th century for some, became a part of the valley's collective memory, giving rise to stories of spectral corpse-bearers, the Leichentrager vom Stummerberg, or dedicated places like the Leichenkammerl, where the dead would rest overnight during their 2-day journey. These legends are not just about ghosts. They are a profound reflection of how the unforgiving geography dictated life, death, and social rituals, shaping communal identity through shared hardship and the enduring respect for the dead. The isolation of these high Alpine communities, accessible only through challenging passes, fostered a unique set of traditions and narratives that underscored their resilience. The Salige Frauen, benevolent mountain spirits, were intrinsically linked to specific geographical features, such as cave dwellings that rooted these important figures firmly in the landscape. Their protection of nature was fierce, and disrespect for the natural world they guarded could lead to dramatic consequences, mirroring the moral authority of the Gefrorene Wand. Even giants were shaped by the land, with oppressive figures terrorizing valleys and ultimately defeated by the Salige Frauen, who linked specific valleys, giants, and weather events to the landscape's features and its protection by spirits. Even the everyday aspects of the Zillertal's geography found their way into folklore, offering explanations for place names or local peculiarities. The Guffeln, the distinctive ground humps in Hart, were explained not as natural formations, but as the burial mounds of ancient pagan warriors, fallen in a fierce battle against Christian settlers. This legend imbues the very earth with historical significance, marking a pivotal moment in the valley's religious and cultural transformation. The land bears witness to the clash of civilizations, its undulations a silent monument to a bygone era. The prophecies about the main towns were remarkably specific, tying their fates directly to their geographical characteristics. Fugen, with its red church tower, was destined to burn. Zell, with its blue-green tower, to be flooded by an erupting lake. And Meyerhofen, with its light green tower, to become a great city. These details underscore a deep-seated awareness of the town's vulnerabilities and potential rooted in their physical environment. In essence, the Zillertal Sagen are the land speaking. They are the collective consciousness of a people deeply interwoven with their environment, interpreting every peak, valley, river, and rock as a source of meaning. The broad, fertile valley inspired tales of prosperity and the dangers of complacency, while the towering, ice-bound peaks became the domain of powerful, often moralizing spirits. The deep gorges and treacherous passes fostered narratives of peril and resilience, and specific landmarks became focal points for divine intervention or ancient curses. These stories underscore a fundamental truth about human culture, that our narratives are inseparable from the landscapes that cradle them, shaping our understanding of the world, our place within it, and the very essence of who we are. As the modern Zillertal continues to evolve, drawing visitors from across the globe, one wonders how these ancient voices of the land will continue to resonate, reminding us that even in an age of technological marvels, the mountains still hold their secrets, and their stories still have lessons to impart. From the benevolent Eismandlin to the cunning devil, and the sacred Gefronen Wand to the haunted Teufelsstieg, the Zillertal Sagen offer a profound journey into the heart of an Alpine culture. These tales, woven into the very fabric of the landscape, reveal a community grappling with nature's power, moral dilemmas, and the inexplicable. They served as a vital guide, teaching resilience, respect, and the enduring struggle between light and shadow. Ultimately, these legends underscore the universal human need to find meaning in our surroundings, shaping identity and connecting generations. As the Zillertal continues to evolve, these ancient whispers remind us that every peak and valley still holds a story. Thank you for listening.